You're listening to A Creative Excuse, presented by Echo a Mano. Echo a Mano's next exhibition is May 31st, 6 to 8 p.m. with Taryn Lastgun. Taryn is a local printmaker. Most recent series of work will be on display. Draws inspiration from his ancestral history mixed with pop art, minimalism, color field, and geometric abstractions. He's working in seriography, also known as silkscreen. Works with his Blackfoot heritage, some of the symbology and imagery seen on painted lodges. Should be a fantastic show. Come out and join us. This is episode 5 with Bob Ebendorf. Bob is an amazing human being. He's a jewelry maker and educator. His work is in 26 museums around the world. In 2003, the Smithsonian hosted a 40-year retrospective of his work. He's a Fulbright Scholar, NEA board member, founding member of the Society of North American Goldsmiths, and recipient of their 2014 Lifetime Achievement Award. So he has been around the block, and it was such a great conversation. I loved hearing some of his wisdoms for being a maker and following that path. All right. Thanks for listening. How you doing?
Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed a pickle or two.
Oh, I did. She made me a dosa.
Ah!
That was a treat. I haven't had lunch yet, so actually,
good. Then
your being late was actually a blessing.
all right.
I appreciate it.
I won't feel guilty at all.
No.
I'm on. Okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity, because I think it's a great. I'll get some water.
No, thank you. This is fun. Do you need a moment?
No.
Center yourself. Although you've been at Upaya, so you're probably nice and centered.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna do like an introduction before, like a pre-recorded introduction,
okay.
So we don't need to go through like,
yeah.
Hi, I'm Bob Ebendorf.
Yeah.
But so what I'll do is I'll say, this is Bob Ebendorf, and maybe say a little bit about you. Is there anything in particular you want me to say? Bob is I know you're a maker, jeweler, educator.
Those are good. That's good. And has recently he and his wife have found their way to Santa Fe.
Mm-hmm.
And he's trying to learn what retirement's about.
Yeah.
But it's, he likes being with the tribe.
Yeah.
And have a lot of gratitude for the road that I chose.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of being instead of being a full-time studio maker and depending on paying my bills by the work that I was doing, I chose another road, and it was a good road, but it gave me the university gave me the chance to have studio practice, make what I wanted to make, very spoiled in that sense. And at the same time, have a financial support and have 3 months off in the summer months.
Mm-hmm.
So the road that I chose, now looking at it many years later, that it was a good road. But am I a maker? Or I'll probably bring this up. Am I a maker or an artist? Or I love I love solving problems, but I'm really an educator. And it just happens to be that if I'm looking at, but what I have a lot of accolades and da-da-da-da-da, but it's the joy as I look back, has been that sharing and passing on what someone gave to me.
Right. Is that the refrigerator?
Yes.
Okay, it's fine.
Is that you sure?
It's fine. I don't want to unplug your fridge. Well, that's a good place to start. I mean, we can go back in time and follow that journey a little bit more too. But I mean, you mentioned, getting used to retirement, and you've been you were teaching for how long?
57 years.
Yeah. So that's longer than I've been alive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a long time to, develop routines and connections and ways of working and ways of being. So I can imagine that transition could be difficult. I don't know. What's your experience with it?
It was difficult. I mean, a lady said, "You look depressed," and I went to therapy because, in 2 months, the hat and coat that I wore every day, and my office assistant, that was all going to evaporate.
Yeah.
And, that was pretty overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And so until when the therapist got my head around in our conversations that education was really been a blessing and has been something that I now look at and celebrate with great pride.
Yeah.
At the same time, fortunately, with 29 museums around the world that have examples of my work, that gives somewhat of a crazy validation of that you were pushing parameters and using skills of craftsmanship.
Right.
But you can lead me in whatever direction you want.
Well, I think maybe we will go back in time, and then we can kind of end up back in this spot too. So you grew up in
Topeka, Kansas.
Uh-huh.
And my father was a medical gentleman in the medical field. Had a great mom. It's just a mid-American household, and growing up was great joy and pleasure. And there was love in the household, and I didn't experience rough experiences growing up. But I won't say sheltered, but it was a joy.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually I found myself going off to the University of Kansas instead of taking athletic scholarships to Nebraska and Oklahoma and playing football and wrestling, that I chose to go to into the art department.
Were either of your parents creative people?
No, but I think when I look at that, I think that they were very supportive. I took a Saturday art class, but nature was big, and we in the fall would go out and gather, dried leaves that had color, and also bittersweet, which was a wild vine that would grow, and then it would turn quite red, and we would go out and clip very carefully, not tear, but clip the branches and bring them back, and I would make bundles of these, and then getting ready close to Christmas time, I would sit on the street and sell bundles of bittersweet, and that money was the money that I had for my buying Christmas gifts. So, but we did spend time nature-wise. My father was not a person that would go camping or hiking or hunting or fishing with me. I found those avenues through my classmates. When that family would go out, I had a chance to go, hunting with another father and son. But creatively, I went to the church once a week with my mother in the basement doing craft projects where with seashells and glue, string around wine bottles for candle holders, bridge clubs were big, playing cards, and so we'd make my mother's bridge club the name tags, then we'd glue shells down on it. So I think that was some of the early working with materials and putting together. I didn't know that was about design, but putting together compositions, things that I think it place it here, place it there. And then high school, instead of taking the auto mechanics class and learning how to change tires and change oil and in the car, I took the art class. And the lady found that I was very interested in it, in the craft. It was clay, and then there was chip carving with X-Acto knife and wood, and then there was the jewelry part. And oftentimes she would ask me if I'd want to stay after class and tidy up the studio for the next class to come in. And I think it was from her nurturing and showing some interest in in me that probably lit the candle of, I wanted to know more about this thing about materials and gaining skills. But I was not a good student, so I had severe dyslexic problems and reading problems and writing problems. So throughout the college time, I came very close to flunking out. My art classes were strong, but my psychology class or my English class or theme writing, I was, really on the edge. And so that was quite a challenge for me. I was not gay, but definitely I was a closeted young person, feeling very impaired academically. So the arts gave me a chance to speak with different language and different words. And when I started getting acknowledgement with my university artwork in competitions or national competitions, that began to help throw my shoulders back and find some self-esteem probably. But here I was flunking the other class, etc.
Right. At what point did you start kind of developing a focus in adornment and jewelry making?
I think during the university time, I was taking a lot of clay classes, textile classes, and the jewelry classes. But I began finding myself honing in on personal adornment and making a ring to give to somebody, making a gift. But adornment began to catch my eye, and this thing about metal, putting these pieces together with soldering or rivet or whatever. So I would say at university times, I definitely caught a fire on personal adornment. And it was very much focused in a metal behavior, from raising bowls in silver and a teapot, or making a necklace, and learn different things like casting metal, forging metal. I had no iron experience. It was just all copper or silver. And then the Fulbright, when that happened, that catapulted me into a really very in-depth skill level of learning under the Scandinavian in Norway at the academy.
And when did you start college? What year?
Must have been 53 or something like that.
And can you recall like any particular mentors there that really you felt encouraged you, and kind of maybe like that high school teacher that sort of helped point you in the
high school direction? Teacher was big.
Yeah. Very
big. Fabian Wolf was very important. And then when I got into the university, there were certain professors that seemed to take me not off to the side, but would look in on my academics. Bob, let me see your paper. You had to write a paper, because he knew that I was failing in things. So there were certain professors, but they were all homegrown within the university. Outside the university, art figures, mentors. I don't think that I was really awake yet on that. Maybe in the arts, painters, contemporary painters, but in the jewelry arena or in the craft arena, that was slow and awakening, I think, and maybe became much, much more to the forefront when I had the Fulbright and all of a sudden found myself in Norway looking at museums of historical things. And then
when
also,
was that?
must have been, well, let's see, I did the undergraduate at University of Kansas. That was 3 years, and then that was 4 years, and then did the 3 years MFA, the master's. So that must have been in the early 60s. Matter of fact, I was in Norway the year that Robert Kennedy was assassinated.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So that gives you that timeline there. And being out of the country when this tragedy happened, it was a very, very strange feeling to feel very lost and very much alone, very much away from the family in that sense.
And how did the Fulbright come about?
I always was at the art department every evening working in the studios. If it was printmaking or metal or might be in the clay studio. One night coming out about 1:30 in the morning, there was a large poster on the bulletin board. It was in yellow letters, yellow and background and black letters, and it said Fulbright Study Abroad. And I remember standing there looking at that sign, and it said the date of application. And I can remember standing and looking at it and saying, "Oh my God, I'm graduating. I have no idea where I'm going. A Fulbright. Oh my God, that'd be oh wait a minute. Fulbright's are for scholars. I'm flunking art history. Can hardly write a paragraph without misspelling everything. So I'm looking at it and I said, but that's for... So 2 weeks later, walking across campus, I happened to go into the library and went up on the second floor and went in this office. And then I said, "Excuse me, is this the Fulbright office?" She said, "Yes." And she said, "Well, you have a week and a half left if you want to apply." And the first thing I said to her, I said, "Well, do we have to speak a foreign language? Because I could hardly handle English." And she, "Oh, no. She says, "There's Australia, there's Scandinavia, there's the UK. No. It's not necessary." And I said, "Well..." And she said, I said, "Yeah, I think I am interested." So she gave me one application. And I said, "No, would you please give me another one?" She said, "But you only need one application." I said, "No, give me." I was so embarrassed to let her know that if I took one application, because I didn't type, I'd have to write things out, and I would misspell things, and I'd have to erase it and all of that. So we battled back and forth, and I couldn't tell her why I needed a second one. So she finally gave me two applications. I went down in the library and started doing research. And from my art history class, I remember that Scandinavian country was beginning to be well recognized in the States about this Scandinavian design, the modern design of the 50s, textiles, clay, and particularly in metal. So I kind of started looking at that. And I remember that night standing on the stage with the other Fulbrighters, and I was the only art person, the first one from the art department, and holding that piece of paper, profusely crying, and just to myself saying, "Bob, you didn't think you were worthy of this opportunity." And it really taught me a big lesson about, if you want to dance, you've got to get on the dance floor.
Yeah. And
went and did the Fulbright, had an incredible experience that continues today be very deep with the mentors and people that are still big in my life. And then coming back, and 5 years later, all of a sudden I picked up Art in America, and I saw that it was the Tiffany Foundation was applications. And I looked at it and I said, "Oh, well, it's just paperwork." And boom, 3 months later, I had a Tiffany grant. And so it was from that humble beginning and learning something about, making it. I get a lot of no's and grants, and sometimes I get a yes, but it's just paperwork and documenting it.
Well, I think that's so huge. I mean, what you said about getting on the dance floor. I think there's so often for me, I notice that, of course our limitations are in our head. Of course we can have, certain limitations as far as financial, or whether it's, racial or societal, where, it's like there's outside forces that create obstacles. But so much of what we're capable of is really what we believe, and I know that's prevented me from taking advantage or even looking into opportunities. I couldn't do that. That's too much. That's so great.
That is interesting. You said we have oftentimes created our own mental block of no, you could do this if the door was open.
Mm-hmm.
You might have to catch the curve. It would take some work, but you are capable of that.
Yeah.
But I do think that oftentimes being positive and looking forward and wanting to be forward thinking, and like Alita says to me, she said, "Well, I don't like to check my bags in the airport. I like to keep them with me because I'm always afraid, and I have experienced other end the bag is not there." And she said, check the bags. You're 80 years old. She said, just how do you want this to end? I said, well, I want my bag at the other end. And she said, well, then look at it that way.
Yeah.
And she says, it will be there.
Yeah.
So it is, many times we talk about that, is that you project that thought in a positive manner and you can create that space.
Well, people respond to it, right? I don't think it's not a matter of some kind of woo-woo mysterious thing. It's a real impact that we have on people on a day-to-day basis. You know what happens when somebody walks in the room and they're pissed off. You're like, whoa, what's up with that guy? Or if somebody comes into the room beaming, and how that can change a room. And so I think I look at it as just cause and effect. You get what you put out.
That's beautiful. Yes, you do. That's yes. If you cop an attitude, then right away you've created a ditch and a distance, and also a sense of being protective. And in that sense,
I think it applies to what you were talking about with opportunity. If you assume that this is an opportunity versus something you can't do, then you'll never. If you assume it's an opportunity, then you'll try.
Yes.
And if you don't, if you think, oh, that's not for me, you'll never try. So you'll never get it. Yeah. And then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then you have evidence to support, oh, I guess I'm not good enough.
Mm-hmm. Yes. But I do think that, positive thinking is something that maybe I'll say that I've learned over the years, that it makes a lot of difference when you do approach things in that frame of reference, instead of a negative or a fearful or, oh, I can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
But some people catch that curve and that realization earlier on. It takes more time.
How do you apply that when you see a lot of the negative things happening in the world? We're inundated by media that shows us a lot of terrible things happening. How do you stay positive in the midst of that?
Boy, that's at this moment in time in our history, that's a big challenge, I think.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when I hear of the devious things, the horrible things, and the things that lying and not being transparent, it's so overwhelming sometimes that I find myself maybe like an ostrich putting my head in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
And then how can I turn that around? Or if I go and march with a group of people to show alliance or to show support, does that really make a difference? Well, it does.
Mm-hmm.
But I find myself being very overwhelmed sometimes.
Yeah.
In that sense.
I think it's a challenge, for me personally, but it's also, I think, I try to look at it as almost like a test. It's like, here's this thing that, how am I going to respond? Right? I can't control a whole lot, but I can control how I respond, and so if I approach a situation and it's like, okay, I'm either going to get beat down or I'm going to say, you know what? No, I'm going to stay resilient. I'm going to keep beaming. I'm going to keep love in my heart. I'm going to keep sharing that. It's a harder choice, but I think it's possible. Don't you?
Yeah, I think, I think an open heart and love is big, and it's, love doesn't go anywhere. Sometimes you're in the darkness or in the forest, and you don't think that love or joy is going to come back.
Yeah.
But it is there, and it's just that we need to find our way and be positive and come into the sunshine again.
Yeah.
And I know that when I've had those dark times in my life, that I thought that sunshine would never come again. That, wow, it did happen. And so I think that I'm very much aware of, that about love, and it doesn't go anywhere. It's always
I love
there.
that, yeah. It doesn't go anywhere.
It's always there, but sometimes we're just the fog and the riffraff in front of it is not is overwhelming. In that sense.
So going back to the storytelling, so you Fulbright in Norway.
Fulbright, Norway.
And what were you doing there? What were you making jewelry at that time?
I was a Fulbright student in a class at the academy, and that was the Håndverk. It's the Arts and Craft Academy.
Oslo?
In Oslo, Norway. And I was in a class of young men and women who were there to get that they call diplome, a piece of paper to graduate in metal. And that meant both enamels, gold, silver, but primarily it was silver and gold, silver and enamels. And so taking class challenges, projects that the professor would give, and then also to another very important part of that experience was that you spent half the time in the museums and looking at the historical history of Norway in the decorative arts, textiles, ceramics, rose mauling, painting on interiors, and then other part of the time would be in the studio. So we had a combination between, in the museums, studying and drawing and looking. And then they called what inspirata, where we would have to sit there and look in the cases and draw exactly what we were looking at. If it was a coffee pot, and then the other half of the day, you could go anywhere in the museum and just what they call inspirata, inspiration, where you could sit and look at textiles and do patterns and drawings or whatever. And then the other part of the year, we were actually in the studio, sewing and making pieces. So that connection put it between historical and in my graduate and undergraduate, art history was not something that I was miserable at. I had no interest in it. But it wasn't until the Scandinavian experience where museums became alive and became super influential and important, because it was about history and it was about color, about ideas. And so that's why one reason I'm so strongly in support of the importance of museums and documentation of material.
I love museums, and it can be overwhelming for me sometimes, to get into, you've got like 5 big shows or something. It's like, God, how am I going to see all this? I heard somebody the other day suggest a way of interacting with a museum is go in like you're going to find the one piece you're going to steal. And it's, to me, it was just like a way of going in and like really learning to sort of listen to yourself, right? And what do you like? And what is attracting you, And it, because I think sometimes before, for a lot of people, they think about like, oh, how am I supposed to react to this, right? If you don't have an arts vocabulary or experience looking at art, I think that a lot of people say, oh, do I stand in front of this and scratch my chin? How should I stare at this painting for like 5 or 10 seconds? How am I supposed to interact? But I like that sort of twist on things where it's like, okay, I'm going to find the one thing that if I could, I'd steal it and take it home. I really liked that.
Today, that's a great gift that you give me because I talk so often about the importance of museums when I'm lecturing, etc., and acknowledge their hard work and fighting for the last bit of the budget to print something that I've worked for months on this project, but then it's here and then, but I have nothing to document it. It's gone. It evaporates. But to go into the museum or to an exhibition and find the one thing that I covet and enough that I'd want to steal it or take it home.
Yeah.
Forget money. No, you can.
Yeah.
But that's great. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Because I do think that I know the reason that I enjoyed the museum so much. It is like a think tank of ideas and problem solving and color and da-da-da. And I have also found that when I find something, if it's a drawing, if it's a photograph, or if the object on the wall or on the table or on the body is something that's ugly and maybe it's edgy and violent or whatever, I find that oftentimes after leaving the experience of looking at the museum or at the exhibition, there's always one thing that continues to come back in my head visually, and oftentimes it is the piece that has been the most cranky or irritable or ugly or violent. The violent is not a good word. Things that all of a sudden just don't jive with me. Mm-hmm. And
can you think of an example of a piece that at first when you saw it you were like, oh, I don't know about that one, but that it continued to sort of haunt you and maybe you went back to see it?
I can give you an example on a textile. Mm-hmm. I had, as a young person living in Florida, people were leaving the small town and they had wonderful furniture and things, and they were selling a lot of things. And I had the opportunity to go to their home and have first choice. And I was I had become interested in Persian rugs or in rugs. And so there was this beautiful silk Kerman rug, quite large, and I was able to purchase it. And it was very reasonable. But as I walked around and the light was coming through, there was discolorations in certain parts of the rug. And I said, oh, they must have had a dog must have urinated on her or something. But those areas were, that must have been wounded. Not knowing that in the dye batch, when they were weaving, the dyes sometimes weren't exactly the same. So that was something that I found upsetting, and I've often remembered that. But I think in the artwork, the objects are the thing, individual pieces. There's a photographer, Peter Whitkins.
Oh yeah, Peter Whitkins.
That his work was extremely, when I first met it visually, was extremely tough for me, and I didn't know if it was sexually tough or whatever it was, but it was macabre. But once I put the book down, I found myself going back to the library and wanting to revisit it and revisit it. And I just recently saw that he was in Santa Fe.
Did you see the exhibition?
I did not see the exhibition, but I caught it at me on the copy, and I went, oh my God, he was. But there was a good example of a person's work that was very interesting, challenging. The palette was very undifferent, very rough for me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I have not forgotten him.
Right.
And it's funny that as I was just starting, all of a sudden I realized that he was, and like you said, did you see it? And,
yeah. Well, it's interesting. Like, I find that for me in my journey, like, so much of what has made me feel like I was evolving or changing or growing was getting closer and closer to trusting my own intuition. And I wonder, like, does that play into how you work with students at all?
Yes. I mean, I do think that I have I'm going to go back on this. I have
Sure.
two. But yes, in education, I do think that I've had the joy of being in the studio long enough to be able to snoop out or see a person in the studio that there's more potential there than they know about at the moment. Something about their on time, something about their questioning or in the conversation amongst the class when we're discussing work, always on point and discussing, disagreeing or agree. So I do think there is, I'm able to, or I've experienced some plus individuals that have continued to grow and become very strong leaders today. I want to go back to on that same kick about when I'm working, feeling like I know this is what I need to do and just do it I just recently was in the midst of a scholar. He was a Tibetan scholar, and he came to talk to the students. I was just in North Carolina, and the scholar's a friend of mine. And Dr. Moore was coming to talk to a design class in the morning. He didn't know I was in town. He knew that I was coming to town, but he didn't. I was supposed to contact him when I came, but I hadn't done it. So my friend, the teacher of this class, said he's coming to talk. He wants to talk to the students about meditation. And I said, she said, "Do you want to come?" I said, "I'd love to come." But I said, "I'm going to come and sit in the back of the room." And she said, "All right." So I came early. I went in the back room, turned my chair around, took my hoodie, and I just sat there with my hands in my lap and just sat there. So Dr. Moore came in, started talking to the students about meditation and how it might fold into their daily behavior or about their artwork and so forth. And so then I heard him say to the teacher, the professor, something about, "Is that Bob?" And then so I got up and turned around. But what came out of this? He was talking to the students about, he had read something by Michael Jordan, a book that Michael Jordan
The basketball player.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Jordan was in the book, and he's sharing this with the students about in the zone.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there listening. My back is to him. And he's explaining sharing with the students that Jordan was talking about in the zone. And when he's playing and doing his work, and if he's in the zone, it goes in every time.
Yeah.
And he has such positive the zone. And I'm sitting there going, "Oh my goodness."
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I've been there. The
Yeah.
zone. Because when I'm working at my bench, do I struggle over should I do this or do that?
Mm-hmm.
Does this look good or is that well done?
Yeah.
But I'm in that zone.
Right.
And it was just amazing what happened that moment when he talked about the zone. So I kind of thought about that when you said something about when I see someone in the studio, that aspect. But then also in my own studio practice or spiritual practice, when I'm in that zone, it's so clear.
Yeah.
And it's not a struggle. Because I don't like to struggle with the things I make. I want to be playful and be joyful about it.
Yeah.
But in that zone, and I know what that's about.
Well, it's interesting because it's like, I think I have a really broad definition of what creativity is. And I know that, a lot of people think about it simply in connection to art making. And to me, creativity is something that everybody's doing, that we're all kind of, creating. And can be, it can be fluid, or it can be stagnant, or it can be good or bad, but we're all doing that cause and effect dance. We're all putting stuff out in the world. And I think that, that in the zone thing with Michael Jordan or with an artist, to me, that's like a mastery of your creative energy. And maybe it only happens at certain moments. Maybe it comes and goes. But like, I think to me, that's like really getting in touch with creativity, and that it can be applied anywhere.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way?
No, I yes, it is. It can be applied to anything. I mean, particularly when the individual is passionate about, and I won't use the word scholarly, but passionate about their field of interest or their activity. That, I was just thinking about migrant workers, and in the sense of them working the fields and doing the work and just being in they're good at it, and that's what they do, and that particular job. But I think that is a creativity in them, in this sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think of it as like something that we can all sort of tap into and refine and hone, the level at which we tap into it. And maybe that's the art in it, is that practice of creativity. It's like coming back to it again and again and again and again and again. And then, if you're making objects, you get better and better. And you're able to tap into your own sort of intuition, and your work becomes better, that kind of thing. At least that's my theory.
Yeah. Well, I know that when Alita's doing her work, and then when we come together to talk about what she's done on a piece of paper, the joy that we have in just looking on and seeing a creative individual making love to that piece of paper in being so very clear, at the same time creating certain edgy parts that makes me think, does that fit or not fit, but calls my attention to those details.
Yeah. So let's see. So let's go back to the journey. When did you start teaching?
When in graduate school, we had an assistantship. So it was, I was teaching basic design and basic jewelry in my first year of graduate school. So I don't know, about 53, 50.
So early on.
Early on.
Did you feel a connection to teaching at that early stage, or is that something that kind of came gradually?
I didn't. I think it came gradually. What it gave me was, it gave me a financial support, because there was money attached to it. But it also gave me, amongst my professors, a certain position of status. I mean, being asked to deal. But I don't think the teaching really began to bloom where I felt that inner excitement is when I came back from the Fulbright and had my first teaching job. Actually, at Stetson University in DeLand, Florida, that teaching ceramics and jewelry and design, because we were only a three-person department. But at that time, beginning to rally to the excitement of working closely with a group of people, or with one-on-one, seeing certain people become more interested in what they were doing, and also a skill level starting to develop. So probably at that time, but I've been hooked, ever since that first academic teaching job in Florida. That's what I've done. Yeah.
Well, it seems like you're somebody that's continuously inspired by relationships. One of the notable things about Bob is your postcard practice, And how many postcards do you think you do in a week? I think the world wants to know, how many postcards does Bob Ebendorf make in a week?
I don't know. I mean, I usually in the morning I start my day by getting unplugged by, altering and collaging and drawing on them. On that same question about postcards, I remembered before the postal rates went up, I heard that the postal rate was going up. And I heard it was on the 27th was when the date was. So I put it on my book. And so I was in North Carolina lecturing, and all of a sudden I looked and I said, "Oh my God, I got to go to the post office today." So bought forever stamps, about $100 and some worth of forever stamps. And then I asked the lady about the postcard stamps, and she said, "Well, here's the printout from my official printout. I think they're staying the same. There's no alteration."
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that that it has become a spiritual practice, and I've become quite fond of them. And
for those who don't know, you create your own postcards out of collage. And this is one of the main ways that you stay in touch with friends.
Yeah, because I'm not computer literate. I don't even know how to turn on a computer. And it's as simple as this, that one evening not so long ago, Alita was upstairs getting ready to go to bed. I was down in the studio, and the computer was open, and the light it was on. And I thought, what key? I don't know what key to push. So Alita, your computer's on. How do I turn it off? And she said, "Bob, just push the lid down. It will go off."
Mm-hmm.
But so therefore, my Rolodex and communications for me, the postcard is the way that I stay in touch with many people. And some of the museum directors who I know and have worked with over the years, they always say, "Bob, I've never seen anybody can get as much information on a postcard and misspelled. I don't know if you're doing drugs or smoking dope or whatever, but they're a hoot."
Well, I personally really appreciate getting them. I know everybody else that I talk to does as well. And I love the fact that I'm here in Santa Fe with you and I still get postcards. I think that's great. And I think, in a day and age where we are relying on email and things like that, to get something like that handmade, it's a treat. It's a real treat.
Well, it definitely has been a joy, and I have enjoyed. And I do know that many of the friends or people that I do stay in touch with have collected them and saved them. I mean,
I'm saving them.
So there's right now there's a collector a couple. And they're now in negotiation with the museum to pass deaccession or to gift to the museum, the 90 pieces of my jewelry they have, plus all the postcards and all the letters and correspondence.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of, what? And she said, well, just like when the Smithsonian came and took away, 45 boxes of drawings and papers and things. So the postcards have become fun and a way I stay in touch personally with those people I love and also do business with.
Yeah, but that connecting principle, you seem like somebody who is very into creating connections with people and putting people together. That was, I think that from the first time I met you, I could tell that you were, you wanted to connect with what we were doing at the gallery. You wanted to connect with people. You wanted to put us in touch with people. You saw how things could become connected. Maybe that reflects your jewelry practice as well. You see like different people and you see like different things that are like, ooh, you guys should go together. And your jewelry does that as well, right? Like you have these disparate elements that you put together.
Well, I will pick up on what you said, because I do know that many my close friends, or even people say, you are a connector. Mm-hmm. You are the 220 voltage that will put it. And I will have to say that when I met you that first evening, Kat Cole was talking, and I wanted to make some comment about what she was talking about, the exhibition that was there. And so I stepped forward. I asked if I could And that was the night that I met you. And then we had some short conversation. But I said to myself, I said, I think I can work with this person. But, I'm new in town, and it just, I need to just, because Alita had asked if I would stay just under the radar and get our house set up. But there is that joy of bringing together, making a gourmet meal and putting the right salad dressing together. And believe me, I've enjoyed that dance with you from pretty much the first time that I came in your presence from afar, but then little by little wanting to have more water, more drink.
Yeah.
In that sense.
Yeah, you've been around the planet for a little while. I mean, what's important? You've got a lot of recognition for what you've done, and I'm sure that's great, right? Because you've put a lot of energy into the work that you do, but you've also put so much energy into creating connections with people and like having those relationships. What is it that keeps you inspired? What is it that when you look back on your life, you're like, yeah, that's the juice that you continue to work with?
That's a super question, particularly at 80 years of age and looking at that at the same time. Health issues are now surfacing and bringing questions that from afar that, and then realizing that what time is left on the planet and how do I want to spend that time. And when I look back, what's the joy of the moment? What's the joy besides my loved one that I live with and that I'm married to? I think that turning inward on relationship, turning inward on friendships, and realizing.
What do you mean by that, turning inward?
Turning inward, looking deeply at what friendships and love is about, and how at times I was so blind that I things slipped within my fingers that I now look back on and realize that I lost certain things that were special. Mm-hmm. And I think we anyway, that's life. But coming to the age point and realization of what is special each day, and from the moment we were born, we're dying, and so right now death is big. has been something that very much on my plate. Because a lot of my friends are not here.
Yeah.
But I think in the sense of love and honor, and would like to be able to contribute to make things better in the world in what small way that I can. And friendships are important. They're like investments, and as long as I nurture them, they stay fluid and healthy. But I'm still happy that I can sit down and be in a creative zone and go, and I have a place to share that object, either at the gallery or in an exhibition, or come and be a speaker with the tribe of people that somewhat acknowledges what creative dance we've been doing. And the decorative arts, I think back of, I'll be speaking at Pinland because I've been honored as this year's honored educator, which is a big deal at their big auction. And I know I have to speak about my time at Pinland, and I stop back and think that it was places like Pinland that cut my teeth on so many things. I mean, I was a young person working for 2 weeks with giants in our fields, ceramics and photographers and glass blowers, people that I've just read about. But here they were opening the door and celebrating this new person coming on board. So I think that as I come to this time in my life, is that there's a gratitude and joy that I still have a voice and seems to be appreciated. And someone said, well, you know, you're the only one left. Can you come and tell us about what it was like getting something started? And that comes out of that educational thing. Because I think because, you know, documenting our educational journey has been important. And oftentimes it's the writers and the scholars that find themselves in the academia that have been able to find the time professionally to do that. Mm-hmm. Where a full-time artist is struggling and connecting the dots and paying the bills and finding the next corporation to help finance this project or whatever.
Right.
And I think the arts are much different today than they were, 25 years ago. And how important the resident programs have become, globally. Men and women who go off on a residency for 2 months or for a year and reconnect with people that also have the same mindset, and how that spawns friendships and it spawns leadership. And oftentimes very special creative work comes out of that.
Yeah. That's great.
I remember writing down from Ghost Ranch with you, and I was trying to bamboozle you into a project, and you were saying that, what I really enjoy, Bob, is I hear you, but what I really enjoy is being the connector, being the orchestra conductor, where I enjoy creatively bringing A, B, and C together and setting up the playground, or setting up the creative format that they can perform. And I never will forget that, because it is so true. There are, stop and think about museum directors or curators, mm-hmm. and who have oftentimes, many of them have been extremely creative in a certain field, but then what they've done is given that up, but have taken that same creative gift and brought it to me, the public. Mm-hmm. And I remember when you, in the car, pulled the plug on that and said, my joy is creating space, mm-hmm. where you and others can perform and be healthy.
Mm-hmm. And let's find a residency program where I can do that. I'm sure it exists.
All right. Just if your household will allow you to be away, or
yeah.
All right.
Well, with this gallery business, I might be planted a little bit more on in the biz, but maybe if we get some success, I can hire somebody and do my own little bit of traveling.
That would be all right. When you go home, look into Gentel.
Gentel?
Gentel. Mm-hmm. It's in Wyoming. Uh-huh. Banner, Wyoming. Gentel.
Okay.
And writers go, photographers go, jewelers go, and Alita's been there.
Mm. Is it kind of a research?
It's on a ranch.
Yeah.
And there's a stipend. Everybody gets X amount of $300 a month, and you all live. And everybody goes off in their studio space and writes, or what was the name of the movie? The Love. There was the woman who did the the movie that was so successful, Love.
Eat, Pray, Love.
Yes.
Elizabeth Gilbert.
Yes. She wrote that book while she was there.
Oh, no kidding.
Alita was there, went to visit, and in the studio there was just all around the wall there were yellow note tags. So she was writing, and then she was developing them.
Oh,
so anyway,
were they there at the same time?
She went there I don't know, how was it? She was not at the same time, but for some reason she did go back to visit. But anyway, that's and it's also in a beautiful part.
Yeah,
we've been invited back, but we just never had gone back yet. Alita and I were supposed to have gone, she kept trying to get me to come, and I was just got out of the university, and I said, well, give me a time to get my feet on the ground.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds cool. I'll look that up.
Yeah.
Well, let's do a lightning round. They don't have to be short answers, but kind of like first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
What's a great lesson you've learned about teaching?
To listen.
That's a good one. What's a great lesson you've learned about craft?
Skill and detail.
Yeah. What's a great lesson you've learned about aging?
Humbling. And life's not on your terms. No.
Yeah, I think that gets back to the it's all about how you respond.
Yes.
Right? There's so much that we don't have control over, but it's like, how do we respond to what comes our way, And
now in this time of my life, there's another flag thrown on the playing field every time you turn around. And it's not, it's, and right now I find Alina talking a lot about toxins, toxins in the body. And then we start talking about, she said, I was working in a dental lab where there was amalgams and, and da-da-da. And so that seems to be a real buzzword right now, is toxins, at least for people that I've been around the last 2 or 3 or 4 months, is that talking about all that stuff that's in our body, what's in the air, your working conditions, and And I went, I never knew anything about toxins.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, but anyway.
It's great. What's a great lesson you've learned about jewelry?
The history's deep, and so many cultures have participated in adornment, and the cup runneth over with love for materials and skill and material, and vision, color. Wow. I mean, just, yeah.
The impulse to adorn ourselves is something I think is really interesting. That it's a very human quality, and quite universal, really, to decorate ourselves in some way.
True. And I when I lecture earlier on, when I used to talk about from my yardstick of history of adornment, of course, there was always the story of and the history of tattoos and how they found their way to America through the sailors coming from Japan, and then also moving forward, that our tattoo culture, our artisans, the tattoo language in the Northwest Coast is quite different than what the language is graphically that you'll find in Columbia, South Carolina. And I was, what? I mean, but then as I started kind of tracking that from the Chinese tattoos, or for that history in the sailors, all of a sudden you had all this mystical quality, all this stuff going on out in the Northwest Coast. But then also to the language that the jewelers from Europe to here, from Asia to here, So it's been very, it's full. And adornment, I'm amazed, coming to Santa Fe, I'm amazed at how much ink is out on the body. Just amazed. Beautiful. And then also, too, oftentimes knowing some tattoo artists who that's what they do daily, is that's their skill. But then also talking with them about the type of clients that come in and why do they choose to have this done, which is always a very interesting story in that sense. A very good friend of mine who is no longer living, Bobby Hansen, who wrote the book of The Art of the Tin Can, he was a tattoo artist himself, had his parlor in the back of his apartment, but he also was a photographer, and he was the international photographer for the international tattoo conventions. And when he would give his lecture, he'd have this wonderful kind of start up the program by saying, when you go to a tattoo convention, what do you do? You show me yours, I'll show you mine. And there were these row of people in their 60s and 70s with their trousers down and, with their whole back tattooed and their legs, men and women. You show me yours, I'll show you. That's what we're all about. But it was just a great icebreaker. So adornment, and in my historical lecture that I give, I always start by in the jungle, men that have totally painted themselves and wrapped themselves with twine, with vines, and leather around there. It's talking about my world's about adornment and color and pattern. And then at the end of the program there was a fence with holes in it, and there were all these naked guys standing there looking through the hole. I said, "This is the end of my peep show, and thanks for being a part of the evening with me." So the adornment is beautifully gifted by so many makers, and the tools I'm using today, and the skills and the techniques I'm using today have been with us from early days. And that 16th century etching that I show in my slides is a etching of a workshop, and all the tools on the wall in this little workshop, and there are many of them the same ones I use today. So I really belong to a family, and the museums have been the caretakers of our language. And that's why I'm so severely supportive and eager to keep the museums healthy with the current voices.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Last question I ask everybody is, can you think of a piece of art, a piece of music, a film, a class even, or maybe even an entire exhibition that changed the way you think? Or that put you in a different direction, or just that changed your life in some way?
Alexander Calder's Lions, his little film of the circus. Here's this older gentleman on the floor with these little wire animals and little feed sack and making noises like a small child, moving the little wire circus characters around on the floor. And that black and white film, I saw it at the Whitney Museum many years ago, and it always brings that playfulness of this older gentleman that continued to know how to be playful. I was once told by a museum director, Alexander Calder lived in Connecticut, not so far from New Paltz, New York. But anyway, there was an exhibition in a New York gallery, and it was going to be opening on Saturday. And the gallery director was freaking out because he had not arrived yet. And it was that. So Saturday morning, he arrived and pulled up in his pickup truck, and he unloaded and came in, and the lady said, "What?" The gallery was totally raw, and he came in with, and he just started taking the wire out on his shoulder and
making it right there.
And by 5 o'clock, the show was in place, and my director friend said it oftentimes was not uncommon that at the opening he'd be wearing that black and red lumberjacket wool shirt that you oftentimes will see, and he'd be walking around and be talking to Mr. Jones or Miss Jones, and he'd be talking
and making pieces right there,
and put it,
wow.
a little. But I think that the little film of Alexander Calder on the floor with the circus, it didn't change my life, but it always makes me smile and makes me realize that sometimes I just get too serious about what I'm doing.
Well, I think there's certain things like that we can sort of always keep in our mind as something to come back to remind us of what we want,
Yes.
and like a symbol, that we keep coming back to. Jung talks a lot about having the importance of holding symbols. Sounds like maybe that was one for you.
Yeah. Well, I think also too that your journey on the podcast and laying that cornerstone for so many of those who you've talked to or you touched on their shoulder and tapped it and said, "Can we come together?" is it's just like the document that is so important. I mean, it's big, and it's nice that you've taken on that, and it also connects you again with people, which is a real joy. But it also gave me afternoon, even though I was late, it gave me for doing pots and pans at Upaya. But then when getting busted on the way home because we stayed to get a bite to eat. But I'm proud to have had a chance to have the afternoon with you.
Yeah, well, thanks for letting me put quarters in your jukebox.
Hey, baby.
You're a real gem, and I feel lucky that we live in the same town. Thanks so much for doing this with me, and look forward to playing with you some more.
And we have some more dances to come. Yeah, absolutely, on your venture.
All
Good.
right.